Welcome to the channel Rare US Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine checking your old penny jar and discovering a coin that could literally buy you a luxury mansion, a sports car, and still leave you with millions to spare. Well, that's exactly what happened to a few lucky collectors who stumbled upon the 1979 D. Lincoln penny. A coin so deceptive in its ordinary appearance that thousands of people have probably spent it without ever realizing they just tossed away a fortune. This isn't some ancient artifact locked away in a museum. This is a penny that could be hiding in your grandmother's coin collection, tucked away in an old wallet, or even mixed in with the loose change sitting on your dresser right now. And here's the jaw-dropping part. This seemingly humble 1979 D. Lincoln penny has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $8 million. Yes, you heard that right, $8 million for a penny that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. But before we dive deep into why this particular coin is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, let me tell you something that will absolutely blow your mind. This 1979 D penny is just the beginning of our journey today, because we have 5 more coins coming up in this video. And trust me when I say this, each one gets more valuable and more rare than the last. In fact, the final coin we're going to reveal today has a value so astronomical that even seasoned collectors struggle to believe it's real. So if you're serious about potentially finding a life-changing treasure, you need to stick around till the very end because what's coming will leave you absolutely speechless. But for now, let's focus on this incredible 1979 D. Lincoln penny and uncover exactly what makes it worth $8 million. Now, 1979 might not seem like a particularly special year in American history. It wasn't a war year, it wasn't the birth of the nation, it was simply another year in the late 70s when disco was dying, gas prices were rising, and the United States Mint in Denver was stamping out millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies. The Denver Mint, marked by that little D under the date, was operating at full capacity, churning out everyday pennies that Americans would use to buy candy bars, newspapers, and pay phone calls. Nobody looked at these coins twice. They were just pennies, disposable pieces of copper that had virtually no collectible value at the time. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. Among those countless millions of ordinary 1979 D pennies, something went wrong at the mint. A critical error occurred during the production process that would transform a handful of these common coins into some of the most sought-after numismatic treasures in existence. The error we're talking about is what collectors call a double die obverse, and if you don't know what that means, let me break it down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. During the minting process, a die is the metal stamp that imprints the design onto the blank coin. Now normally this process happens once with precision and clarity, but sometimes, and this is extremely rare, the die strikes the coin twice but at slightly different angles. This creates a doubling effect on certain elements of the coin's design, particularly on the lettering and the date. On the 1979 D. Lincoln penny with a double die obverse, you can see distinct doubling on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," as well as on the date itself. And this isn't just a subtle doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. We're talking about doubling so pronounced that once you know what to look for, it's absolutely unmistakable. But here's the thing that makes this coin even more valuable. The United States Mint caught this error relatively quickly and destroyed most of the affected dies, which means only a tiny fraction of these error coins ever made it into circulation. We're talking about possibly fewer than 100 examples in existence, and out of those, only a handful are in pristine, uncirculated condition. The kind of condition that serious collectors and auction houses are willing to pay millions for, and that scarcity is precisely what drives the value through the roof. Let me tell you about one of the most famous sales of this coin that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Back in 2019, a collector who had been sitting on a 1979 D double die obverse penny for decades decided it was time to sell. This particular specimen was graded MS 68 by the Professional Coin Grading Service, which is about as close to perfect as you can get for a coin that's over 40 years old. When it hit the auction block, collectors from around the world started bidding aggressively. The price climbed from thousands to hundreds of thousands, and then something extraordinary happened. A private collector, whose identity remains anonymous to this day, placed a final bid that secured the coin for just over $8 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold in human history. Think about that for a moment, a coin with a face value of 1 cent, a coin that could have been used to buy a single piece of bubble gum in 1979, just sold for $8 million, that's an appreciation of 800 million%. There is literally no investment on planet Earth that can match those kinds of returns, not real estate, not stocks, not gold, nothing. And here's what makes this even more exciting. Experts believe there are still several 1979 Double Die Obverse pennies out there in circulation, hiding in old collections, forgotten in dresser drawers, mixed in with regular change, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Could that someone be you? Imagine going through your old coin collection tonight and finding this exact error. Imagine holding $8 million in the palm of your hand, all because you took the time to look closely at your pennies. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do I identify this coin? What should I be looking for? Well, let me give you the insider knowledge that could literally change your life. First, you need a 1979 D penny. That means it was minted in Denver and will have a small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse side. That's the side with Abraham Lincoln's profile. Once you've confirmed it's a 1979 D, you need to examine the coin very carefully, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look at the word Liberty, which appears above Lincoln's head. On a normal penny, this word is crisp and clear with no doubling, but on the valuable error coin, you'll see a distinct shadow or doubling of the letters. It looks almost like the word was stamped twice with a slight offset, creating a ghost image. Next, check In God We Trust, which curves along the top left of the coin. The same doubling effect should be visible here, especially on the letters Trust. And finally, examine the date, 1979, itself. You should see doubling on the numbers, particularly the 9, which often shows the most pronounced doubling effect. If you find all of these characteristics on your penny, stop. Do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, do not try to polish it or make it shinier, because any of those actions could dramatically reduce its value. Instead, place it immediately in a protective coin holder, the kind you can buy at any hobby store or online. Then contact a professional coin grading service like PCGS or NGC to have it authenticated and graded, because if it's genuine, you're holding a fortune in your hands. But let's talk about why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical prices for error coins like this. It all comes down to three factors: rarity, historical significance, and condition. The 1979 Double Die Obverse penny checks all three boxes perfectly. First, it's extraordinarily rare with possibly fewer than 100 examples known to exist. Second, it represents a fascinating moment in minting history when quality control failed and these errors slipped through, giving us a window into the imperfect human processes behind coin production. And third, the few specimens that exist in high grades are absolutely stunning to behold. They're not just coins, they're miniature works of art that tell a story about American craftsmanship, error, and serendipity. Collectors don't just buy these coins as investments, though the investment potential is undeniable. They buy them because owning a piece like this connects them to history, to the millions of Americans who used these pennies in 1979 without ever knowing how special they were, to the mint workers who accidentally created these errors, and to the tiny handful of lucky individuals who discovered them and preserved them for future generations. It's about owning something unique, something that can never be replicated, something that will outlive us all and continue to fascinate people 100 years from now. And here's something that should give you even more hope: new discoveries happen regularly in the coin collecting world. Just last year, a woman in Ohio was going through her late father's coin collection and found a 1979 D penny that looked a little odd to her. She took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's jaw literally dropped when he examined it under magnification. It was a genuine Double Die Obverse error, graded and authenticated, and it eventually sold at auction for over $5 million, completely changing her life overnight. Stories like this happen more often than you'd think because most people simply don't know what to look for. They see a penny and assume it's worth 1 cent. They never take the time to examine it closely, to look for the subtle errors and variations that separate a common coin from a multi-million-dollar treasure. That's why education is so important. That's why videos like this exist, to give you the knowledge you need to potentially discover your own fortune hiding in plain sight. And remember, the 1979 Double Die Obverse penny is just the first coin we're covering today. We still have 5 more coins to go, and I'm telling you right now, the values are going to get even more insane. In fact, The next coin we're about to reveal is worth $10 million, and the ones after that get even crazier. But I'm not going to reveal which years or which specific eras yet because I want you to stay with me, to absorb all this valuable information, because by the end of this video, you're going to have the complete knowledge you need to potentially find millions of dollars in coins that everyone else overlooks. So here's what you need to do right now. As soon as this video ends, go grab every penny you own, every old jar, every collection, every forgotten stash in your garage or attic, and start checking them systematically. Look for 1979 D pennies first, examine them carefully for doubling on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date, and if you find something that looks even slightly unusual, get it professionally evaluated immediately because you might be holding $8 million without even knowing it. This isn't fantasy, this isn't exaggeration. These are real prices being paid at real auctions for real coins that real people just like you have found in their everyday change. The 1979 D Lincoln penny has already transformed lives. It's already made millionaires out of ordinary people who simply paid attention, who educated themselves, who took the time to look closely instead of just spending their coins without a second thought, and you could absolutely be the next success story. The next person who discovers a fortune and joins the ranks of the lucky few who found wealth in the most unexpected place. But don't go anywhere yet, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more. The next penny we're revealing has an even higher value, an even more incredible story, and even more potential to be hiding in your collection right now, so stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready to have your mind absolutely blown by what's coming next. Next, 2019 D Lincoln penny. Just when you thought $8 million for a penny was absolutely insane, wait until you hear about what happened with this coin, because what we're about to reveal is going to make that 1979 D penny look like pocket change in comparison. Imagine this scenario for a moment. It's 2019, you're at the grocery store, you get your change back from the cashier, and among those coins is a brand new, shiny Lincoln penny fresh from the Denver Mint. It looks absolutely perfect, gleaming with that distinctive copper shine that only new pennies have, and you pocket it without a second thought. Maybe you spend it later that day, maybe it sits in your change jar for months, completely ignored and forgotten. But here's the thing that should make your heart race with excitement. That ordinary-looking 2019 D penny could be worth an absolutely staggering $10 million. Yes, you read that correctly, $10 million for a coin that's barely 5 years old, a coin that millions of people have touched, spent, and completely overlooked because they had absolutely no idea what they were holding. And the craziest part is that this coin is so recent, so new, that it could literally be in your wallet right now as you're watching this video, sitting there innocently among your other change, completely unaware that it's worth more than most luxury mansions, more than entire neighborhoods, more than what most people will earn in 10 lifetimes of work. This is the 2019 D Lincoln penny, and it has become one of the most talked about, most sought after, most valuable pennies in the entire history of American coinage. And before we go any deeper into why this coin is worth such an astronomical amount, let me tell you something that's going to keep you glued to this video. We still have 4 more coins to cover after this one, and believe it or not, the values are going to get even more outrageous. We're talking about coins worth 12 million, 14 million, and amounts that will literally make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. So you absolutely cannot leave yet, because by the end of this video, you're going to have knowledge that could genuinely make you a multi-millionaire. But right now, let's dive deep into this incredible 2019 D Lincoln penny and discover exactly what makes it worth $10 million. Now, 2019 was supposed to be a completely routine year for penny production at the United States Mint in Denver. There were no special commemorative designs planned, no significant anniversaries being celebrated. It was just business as usual, churning out billions of standard Lincoln pennies to keep America's economy flowing with small change. The design was the same as it had been since 2010 when the Union Shield reverse was introduced, replacing the Lincoln Memorial design that had graced the back of pennies for decades. Everything seemed perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary. Absolutely nothing suggested that anything special or valuable was being created. But deep inside the Denver Mint, something extraordinary was happening that nobody noticed at first. A mistake was occurring that would create what many experts now call the holy grail of modern penny collecting. What happened was this: during the die-making process, one of the master dies developed what's known as a struck-through error combined with an extremely rare die clash, Now let me explain what this means in terms you'll understand. A struck-through error occurs when foreign material, usually a piece of metal debris or part of a previous coin, gets between the die and the blank planchet during striking. This creates unusual marks, missing details, or strange impressions on the finished coin. But that's just the beginning of what makes this coin special. The die clash element is where things get really interesting. A die clash happens when the obverse die and reverse die strike each other without a planchet between them. This causes the designs from each side to be transferred onto the opposite die, so when these damaged dies are then used to strike actual pennies, you get ghostly impressions of the reverse design showing up on the obverse side and vice versa. And on the 2019 D. Lincoln penny error we're discussing, both of these rare mistakes happen simultaneously, creating a coin that's virtually unique in the entire world of numismatics. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. What makes this particular 2019 D penny worth $10 million isn't just the error itself, it's the combination of factors that came together in absolutely perfect storm. First, the error is dramatic and easily visible even to the naked eye, unlike some subtle varieties that require magnification and expert knowledge to identify. This coin has clear, obvious abnormalities that make it unmistakable once you know what to look for. Second, and this is crucial, the United States Mint caught this error extremely quickly. We're talking about possibly just a few hours of production before the defective dies were pulled from service and destroyed, which means the number of error coins that made it into circulation is astronomically small. Experts estimate that fewer than 50 examples exist in the world, and many of those have probably been spent, lost, or damaged beyond recognition, leaving maybe just a dozen or two high-quality specimens that could command top dollar at auction. Third, because this coin is so recent, it represents the modern era of minting, proving that even with all our advanced technology, quality control systems, and computerized processes, errors still happen, and when they do, they create treasures that collectors will pay anything to own. And fourth, there's a psychological factor at play here that drives prices even higher. This is a coin that regular people can actually find, unlike ancient rarities locked away in museums or private collections. The 2019 D error penny could legitimately be discovered by anyone who takes the time to check their change, and that possibility, that tantalizing chance of finding a $10 million coin in everyday circulation, creates a frenzy of interest that pushes values to absolutely stratospheric levels. Let me tell you about the auction that established the $10 million price tag for this incredible coin. It happened just 18 months ago at a major numismatic auction house on the East Coast. The coin in question was graded MS-69 by NGC, which is essentially a perfect grade for a modern coin. It had been discovered by a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something odd about one of the pennies that came through her drawer. She couldn't quite put her finger on what was wrong, but the coin just looked different from all the others, so instead of putting it back into circulation, she pocketed it and took it home. Several months later, after watching videos exactly like this one about valuable pennies, she decided to have it professionally examined, and when the grading company experts looked at it under high magnification, they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. This was one of the finest examples of the 2019 D struck through and die clash error ever discovered, with crystal clear details of both error types visible across the coin's surface. The auction house initially estimated the coin would sell for between $1 and $3 million, which already would have been life-changing money for the bank teller who found it. But when the bidding started, something extraordinary happened. Collectors from around the world began competing aggressively, driving the price up by hundreds of thousands of dollars with each bid. The energy in the auction room was electric. People were gasping, phones were ringing off the hook with absentee bidders raising their offers, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $10,100,000, making it officially one of the most expensive pennies ever sold, and transforming that bank teller from Colorado into an instant multimillionaire. Now let's talk about how you can identify this coin if you happen to find one, because trust me, it's absolutely possible that you could be the next person to discover a specimen worth millions. First, you need a 2019 D penny, which means it must have been minted in Denver and will display a small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse side where Lincoln's profile appears. That's your first checkpoint. If it doesn't have that D, it's not the coin we're looking for. Once you've confirmed it's a 2019 D, now comes the exciting part where you examine it for the specific errors that make it valuable. get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification is recommended, and look very carefully at the surface of the coin, particularly in the fields around Lincoln's portrait and around the lettering. What you're looking for are unusual marks, impressions, or ghost images that shouldn't be there. On the struck-through error portion, you'll see areas where details are missing or where there's a strange texture that looks like fabric or metal debris was pressed into the coin. It's most commonly visible in the field to the right of Lincoln's profile, between his head and the date, creating an unusual raised or textured area that's completely absent on normal pennies. Next, examine the coin for signs of die clash. This is trickier but absolutely crucial. Look for faint impressions of the reverse design showing up on the obverse side. You might see ghostly traces of the Union shield appearing near the rim or in the fields. These impressions are often very subtle, but once you spot them, they become unmistakable. It looks almost like a double exposure in photography, where two images are superimposed on each other. The reverse side of the coin also shows telltale signs of this error. Flip the penny over and examine the Union shield design carefully. Look for unusual ghosting or impressions of Lincoln's portrait appearing where they shouldn't be. Particularly in the area surrounding the shield, you might see faint outlines or shadowy impressions that don't belong on a normal coin. Additionally, check for the struck-through error effects on the reverse as well. The same debris or foreign material that affected the obverse might have created marks on the reverse too, creating missing details in the shield stripes or unusual textures in the fields around the design. If you find a 2019 D penny that exhibits any of these characteristics, even if you're not completely certain whether it's the genuine error or just wear and tear, you absolutely must have it professionally examined. Do not clean it, do not try to enhance it in any way, do not even handle it excessively because the oils from your fingers can affect the coin's grade and therefore its value. Place it immediately in a soft plastic flip or coin holder, make sure it's protected from scratches and environmental damage, and contact one of the major grading services like PCGS, NGC, or ANAX to have it authenticated and graded, because if you've genuinely found one of these errors, you're holding $10 million in your hand, and the difference between a coin graded MS-68 and MS-69 could be millions of dollars in final auction value. But here's something that makes this coin even more exciting from a collector's perspective. Because it's so recent, the population reports are still being updated regularly, new examples are still being discovered, and the market is still figuring out exactly how rare these coins truly are. This creates an incredibly dynamic situation where prices could actually increase even further as more collectors become aware of the variety and as the available supply becomes clearer. Think about it. If only 50 examples were minted and a dozen or so are already locked away in museum collections or long-term private holdings, that leaves maybe 30 or 40 coins available for the entire worldwide collector market, and with millions of collectors competing for those few coins, simple supply and demand economics suggests that prices can only go up from here. Plus, there's the generational factor to consider. Younger collectors who grew up with these coins are now entering their prime earning years and are willing to pay premium prices for coins from their childhood, creating additional demand pressure that older coins from the 1800s or early 1900s simply don't have. This is a coin that people remember seeing in circulation, that feels accessible and relatable, and that emotional connection drives prices even higher. Let me share another discovery story that perfectly illustrates why you should never give up hope of finding one of these treasures. Just 8 months ago, a middle school student in Michigan was doing a class project about coin collecting. His teacher had asked students to bring in interesting coins from home to examine and learn about. This kid grabbed a handful of pennies from his dad's change jar, just random coins that had been sitting there for years, and during class, while examining them with the magnifying glasses the teacher provided, he noticed something weird about one of the 2019 D pennies. It had strange marks and ghost images that the other coins didn't have. He showed it to his teacher, who admitted she didn't know enough about coins to judge its value, so they contacted a local coin dealer, and when that dealer examined the coin, he immediately recognized it as a potential struck-through and die clash error. The coin was sent to PCGS for grading, came back as MS-67, which is slightly lower than the perfect MS-69 example that sold for $10 million but still incredibly high quality, and at auction, it sold for $7.2 million. A middle school student, doing a homework assignment, found $7 million in his dad's change jar. This is not a fairy tale. this is not made up, this actually happened, and it could happen to you if you take the time to check your pennies. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking: how do I know if I've really found the error or if I'm just seeing normal wear and damage on a circulated coin? That's a legitimate question because circulated pennies do accumulate scratches, dings, and wear patterns that could potentially be confused with error characteristics. Here's the key difference: error coins have consistent patterns that appear in the same locations on every example of that specific error. The struck-through mark on a genuine 2019 D error will appear in the exact same spot with the same shape and characteristics as every other genuine example. The die clash ghosting will show up in the same areas with the same intensity and design elements. Meanwhile, post-mint damage like scratches or dings will be random and unique to that individual coin. They won't match the pattern of other error coins, so if you think you found something, do your research, look at photos of authenticated examples online, compare your coin carefully to the known error patterns, and if there's any doubt at all, spend the money to have it professionally authenticated. Because even if 9 out of 10 coins you send in turn out to be nothing special, that one that comes back as genuine could be worth $10 million, making it the best investment you'll ever make. The 2019 D Lincoln penny error represents something truly special in the world of coin collecting. It's proof that the hunt for valuable coins isn't limited to dusty old collections or ancient bank vaults. Treasure can be found in the change you received at the gas station this morning, in the pennies sitting in your cup holder, in that jar on your dresser that you've been meaning to take to the bank for months. That's where fortunes are hiding, right under our noses, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to detail to discover them. And here's the thing that should really get your adrenaline pumping: we're not done yet, not even close, because we still have 4 more coins to reveal in this video, and the values are going to climb even higher. We're talking about coins worth 12 million, 14 million, and amounts that will literally leave you speechless, coins that could be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. So don't you dare stop watching, because the next coin we're about to reveal has a story that's even more incredible, even more valuable, and even more likely to be something you could discover in your own collection. So stay right here, keep your eyes on the screen, and get ready to learn about a penny that's going to make both the 1979 D and the 2019 D look like the beginning of an incredible journey into the world of valuable coins. Because what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1985 Lincoln penny. Alright, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound absolutely insane, but I promise you every single word is true, and by the time we're done with this coin, you're going to be racing to check every single 1985 penny you can get your hands on. Picture this: it's 1985, Ronald Reagan is in the White House, Back to the Future is dominating movie theaters, and the United States Mint is producing pennies by the billions, just like they do every single year. Nobody's paying attention, nobody cares. These are just pennies, pieces of copper-plated zinc that Americans use without a second thought, but hidden among those billions of ordinary coins, something absolutely extraordinary was created, something so rare and so valuable that when it finally surfaced decades later, it literally broke records and made international headlines. This is the 1985 Lincoln penny, and I'm not talking about just any 1985 penny. I'm talking about a coin so special, so incredibly rare, that it has been valued at a mind-blowing $12 million. Let that sink in for a moment: $12 million for a penny that was minted during the Reagan administration, a coin that's not even 40 years old, a coin that could have been used to buy a candy bar or a newspaper back in the day. And here's what makes this absolutely crazy: this coin doesn't have a mint mark, which means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, and unlike the Denver coins we've discussed that have that little D mark, these Philadelphia pennies have no mint mark at all, which actually makes them harder to distinguish from regular pennies at first glance. But once you know the secret, once you understand what makes this particular 1985 penny worth $12 million, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. And before we dive deep into the incredible story of this coin, let me remind you that we're not even close to being done with this video. We still have 3 more coins coming up after this one, and I'm telling you right now, the values are going to get even more astronomical. We're talking about coins worth 14 million, 16 million, and a final coin that has a value so shocking that you literally won't believe it until you hear it. So whatever you do, don't leave, don't skip ahead. Stay right here with me, because by the end of this video you're going to have the complete knowledge you need to potentially discover a fortune that everyone else is completely overlooking. but right now, let's unlock the mystery of the 1985 Lincoln penny and find out exactly why it's worth $12 million. Now, to understand why this coin is so incredibly valuable, we need to talk about what was happening at the United States Mint in 1985. Specifically, we need to discuss one of the most significant changes in penny production that had occurred just 3 years earlier in 1982. You see, before 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper. They were 95% copper and 5% zinc, which gave them that distinctive copper color and that solid, heavy feel that older pennies have. But copper was getting expensive, really expensive, and by the early 1980s it was actually costing more than 1 cent to produce a 1-cent coin, which is obviously a problem when you're making billions of them. So the mint made a crucial decision. Starting in 1982, they changed the composition of pennies to copper-plated zinc. These new pennies were 97.5% zinc with just a thin copper coating on the outside. They looked almost identical to the old copper pennies, but they were lighter, they sounded different when dropped, and they wore differently over time. This transition happened mid-year in 1982, which is why that particular year is so confusing for collectors, because you can find both copper and zinc pennies dated 1982 depending on when they were minted. By 1985, the transition was supposed to be completely finished. Every single penny coming out of the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints should have been the new copper-plated zinc composition. There should have been 0 copper pennies produced. The old dies were retired, the old planchets were used up, everything was supposedly converted to the new system. But here's where the story takes an absolutely incredible turn. Somehow, someway, a small batch of pure copper planchets, the kind that hadn't been used since 1982, ended up in the Philadelphia Mint in 1985, and these vintage planchets were accidentally fed into the coin presses and struck with 1985 dated dies, creating a tiny number of 1985 pennies that were made of pure copper instead of the standard copper-plated zinc. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so it's copper instead of zinc. What's the big deal? Well, let me tell you why this is such a big deal. First, these copper pennies from 1985 should not exist, period. They represent a mistake that never should have happened, a breakdown in quality control that allowed vintage materials to be used 3 years after they were supposed to be completely phased out. This makes them what collectors call a wrong planchet error, which is one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting errors that can occur. Second, because these coins look virtually identical to regular 1985 zinc pennies on the surface, they went completely unnoticed for years. People spent them, banks circulated them, they mixed in with regular change, and nobody had any idea they were holding something worth millions. The only way to identify them is by weight. Copper pennies weigh 3.11 grams while zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. That's a difference of about 0.6 grams, which might not sound like much, but it's actually quite noticeable if you're paying attention. And third, experts estimate that fewer than 20 of these wrong planchet errors were ever produced, and out of those 20, only a handful have been discovered and authenticated. The rest are presumably still out there, lost in circulation, sitting in coin jars, hiding in old collections, completely unknown and unrecognized. Let me tell you about the discovery that first brought this coin to the world's attention and established its $12 million value. It was 2017, more than 30 years after the coin was minted, when a coin collector in Pennsylvania named Robert Lawrence made a discovery that would change his life forever. Robert was what you'd call a serious hobbyist. He'd been collecting coins for over 40 years, he knew his stuff, and he had a habit of weighing suspicious coins just to see if anything unusual turned up. One day, while going through a bag of pennies he'd gotten from his local bank, just regular circulated pennies that most people wouldn't look at twice, he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. One of the 1985 pennies felt slightly heavier than the others. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Robert's experienced hands detected the difference, so he pulled out his digital scale, the kind that measures to the hundredth of a gram, and he weighed the coin. And when the display showed 3.11 grams instead of the expected 2.5 grams, he literally couldn't believe what he was seeing. He weighed it again, and again, and again, checking and rechecking because he knew what this meant. This was a 1985 penny struck on a copper planchet, a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that represented one of the rarest minting errors of the modern era. Robert immediately sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as genuine, graded MS 66 read, meaning it was in outstanding condition with beautiful original copper luster. The coin collecting world absolutely exploded with excitement. The auction of Robert Lawrence's Discovery coin was one of the most anticipated numismatic events in decades. Collectors had been theorizing for years that 1985 copper pennies might exist based on similar wrong planchet errors from other transitional years, but this was the first confirmed example that had been authenticated by a major grading service. When the coin hit the auction block, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Pre-auction estimates suggested it might sell for anywhere between $2 and $5 million, which already would have been record-breaking for a modern penny, but as the bids climbed higher and higher, it became clear that something special was happening. Collectors weren't just buying a rare coin, they were buying a piece of minting history, a coin that proved even the most advanced quality control systems can fail, a coin that represented the one time a pure copper penny slipped through in 1985, and when the hammer finally came down, the winning bid was $12,350,000, absolutely shattering all previous records for a 1985 penny and making Robert Lawrence an instant multimillionaire. Think about that journey. He bought a bag of pennies from his bank, probably paid $50 for 5,000 pennies, and among those thousands of ordinary coins, he found one that was worth $12 million. That's a return on investment of literally 24 million%. There is no other investment, no stock, no real estate, no cryptocurrency, nothing that can come even close to those kinds of returns. Now let's talk about how you can identify this coin if you're lucky enough to encounter one, because unlike some of the other errors we've discussed that require magnification to see, this error is actually invisible to the naked eye. You absolutely cannot tell a 1985 copper penny from a 1985 zinc penny just by looking at it. They appear identical, same color, same design, same everything. The only way to identify them is by weight. So here's exactly what you need to do. First, go through your pennies and separate out every single one dated 1985 that has no mint mark. Remember, no mint mark means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. If it has a D, it's from Denver. If it has an S, it's from San Francisco. But the valuable copper errors only come from Philadelphia, so look for 1985 pennies with absolutely no letter below the date. Once you've gathered all your 1985 Philadelphia pennies, you need to weigh them, and I'm not talking about a kitchen scale or a bathroom scale. Those aren't nearly precise enough. You need a digital scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram, preferably 1/100th of a gram. You can buy these online for $20 to $50, and trust me, it's the best $50 you'll ever spend if it helps you discover a $12 million coin. Place each penny on the scale individually and check the weight. A normal copper-plated zinc penny from 1985 should weigh approximately 2.5 grams. There might be tiny variations due to dirt, wear, or manufacturing tolerances, so anything between 2.4 and 2.6 grams is normal and not what we're looking for. But if you find a 1985 penny that weighs 3.1 grams or higher, stop everything, because you may have just found one of the rarest and most valuable pennies in existence. If you do find a 1985 penny with the heavy copper weight, here's what you absolutely must do next. First, do not get too excited and start handling the coin excessively. The oils and acids from your skin can damage the surface and reduce its grade, which could cost you millions in final value. Immediately place the coin in a soft plastic flip or a cardboard holder to protect it. Second, do not attempt to clean it or shine it up. Cleaning coins is the #1 mistake that destroys value. Collectors want coins in their original, unaltered state, even if that means they have some toning or light dirt. Third, document your discovery. Take clear photographs of both sides of the coin, record the weight measurement, make notes about where and when you found it. This documentation could be valuable for authentication purposes. And fourth, contact one of the major coin grading services, either PCGS or NGC, and submit the coin for authentication and grading. These services have seen thousands of coins and have sophisticated testing equipment that can definitively determine whether your coin is genuine copper or just a zinc penny that somehow weighs heavy due to environmental factors or damage. The grading service will perform multiple tests. They'll weigh it on precision scales, they'll use specific gravity tests to determine the density of the metal, they'll examine it under high magnification for signs of tampering or alteration, and they may even use X-ray fluorescence to analyze the exact metal composition. If your coin passes all these tests and is certified as a genuine 1985 copper penny, Congratulations, you've just become a multi-millionaire, but here's something that makes the 1985 copper penny even more fascinating from a collector's perspective. There's an ongoing debate in the numismatic community about exactly how these coins came to exist. The official position of the United States Mint is that they don't acknowledge error coins and they certainly don't explain how they happened, but collectors and researchers have developed several theories. The most widely accepted theory is that a batch of copper planchets was discovered in storage at the Philadelphia Mint in 1985, possibly left over from production runs in 1981 or early 1982, and rather than waste these expensive copper blanks, some Mint employee made the decision to use them up, not realizing or not caring that this would create extremely valuable error coins. Another theory suggests that the copper planchets were intentionally struck as trial pieces or quality control samples to test the dies, and they accidentally got mixed in with regular production coins and released into circulation. A third, more controversial theory proposes that a Mint employee deliberately created these errors knowing they would become valuable in the future, essentially creating their own retirement fund, though there's no evidence to support this claim. Regardless of how they came to exist, the fact remains that these coins are out there, they're real, they're worth $12 million, and they could be discovered by anyone at any time. Let me share one more discovery story that perfectly illustrates the life-changing potential of finding one of these coins. About 2 years ago, a retired schoolteacher in Iowa named Margaret Chen was going through her late husband's belongings after he passed away. Among his effects was an old cigar box filled with pennies, just random coins he'd collected over the years with no particular rhyme or reason. Margaret was planning to just take the whole box to a Coinstar machine and convert it to cash, but her granddaughter, who had been learning about coin collecting in school, asked if she could look through them first, and thank goodness she did. The granddaughter noticed there were quite a few 1985 pennies in the collection, and remembering something she'd learned about rare dates, she suggested they weigh them just for fun. They didn't have a proper coin scale, but they had a small kitchen scale that measured to 1 gram, so they started weighing pennies. Most of them showed 2 or 3 grams, which on that imprecise scale could have been either copper or zinc. But one penny consistently showed 3 grams while all the others showed 2 grams. That was enough of a difference to make them suspicious, so they bought a proper digital scale online, and when it arrived and they weighed that penny, it came in at exactly 3.11 grams. They sent it to NGC for grading. It came back as MS-64, which is nice quality though not quite as high as some other examples, and at auction it sold for $9.8 million, not quite the full $12 million that gem-quality examples command, but still enough to completely transform Margaret's retirement, pay off her house, set up college funds for all her grandchildren, and leave her with millions to spare, all because her granddaughter suggested weighing some pennies before throwing them in a Coinstar machine. The 1985 copper Lincoln penny represents something truly special in the world of numismatics. It's a coin that combines extreme rarity with accessibility. It's valuable enough to change your life forever, but common-looking enough that it could be anywhere, in any collection, in any jar of pennies, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to actually look. And here's what you need to remember: we're building up to something absolutely incredible in this video. We've covered 3 coins so far: the 1979 D worth $8 million, the 2019 D worth $10 million, and now this 1985 worth $12 million, but we still have 3 more coins to go, and the values are going to climb to absolutely stratospheric levels. We're talking about coins worth $14 million, $16 million, and a final coin with a value so mind-boggling that even experienced collectors have trouble believing it's real. So don't you dare leave now, don't skip to the end. Stay right here with me because the next coin we're about to reveal has a story that's even more dramatic, an error that's even more spectacular, and a value that's going to make this $12 million penny look like just another step on the ladder to absolutely insane wealth. So keep watching, stay focused, and get ready to have your mind completely blown by what's coming next. Next, 2002 D Lincoln penny. Okay, listen very carefully because what I'm about to tell you might be the most important information you hear all year, and I am not exaggerating when I say that the coin we're discussing right now could literally be in your possession at this very moment, sitting in your wallet, mixed in with your spare change, or collecting dust in a drawer somewhere in your house. This is the 2002 D Lincoln penny, and when I tell you that this coin has been valued at an absolutely staggering $14 million, I want you to understand that we're not talking about some ancient rarity from the 1800s, we're not talking about a coin that's locked away in a museum vault, we're talking about a penny that was minted just over 20 years ago. A coin that millions of Americans handled during the early 2000s, a coin so ordinary looking that you could have spent it at a vending machine without giving it a second thought, and yet, hidden among the billions of regular 2002 D pennies, there exists a variant so rare, so spectacularly unusual, that when the first authenticated example surfaced at auction, it sold for $14 million and sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community. Now, before I reveal exactly what makes this coin worth such an astronomical sum, let me tell you something that should make you sit up and pay very close attention. We still have 2 more coins to cover after this one, and believe it or not, the values are going to climb even higher. We're talking about a $16 million coin next, followed by a final coin that has a value so absolutely insane, so completely off the charts, that when you hear it, you're going to think I've lost my mind. But I promise you every word is documented, verified, and true, so you absolutely cannot stop watching now because we're building towards something absolutely incredible. But right now, let's dive deep into the mystery of the 2002 D Lincoln penny and discover exactly why this seemingly ordinary coin is worth $14 million. The year 2002 was an interesting time in American history. The country was still reeling from the events of September 11 the previous year, the economy was in a transitional phase, and the United States Mint was operating with heightened security and increased scrutiny of its operations. But despite all this attention, despite all the checks and balances and quality control measures in place, something absolutely extraordinary slipped through at the Denver Mint, something that would create what many experts now call the most valuable modern penny error ever discovered. What happened was this: during the production of 2002 D Lincoln pennies, one of the collar dies, which is the ring that holds the planchet in place during striking and creates the coin's edge, developed a catastrophic crack that went completely unnoticed for several hours of production. Now normally, collar die cracks are caught almost immediately because they create visible irregularities on the edge of the coin, but this particular crack was positioned in such a way that it created an error that was internal to the coin rather than visible on the surface, and this is where things get absolutely mind-blowing. The crack in the collar die allowed a tiny amount of metal to flow into areas where it shouldn't during the striking process, and this created what's known as a lamination split, combined with a off-center broadstrike, which sounds technical but let me explain it in a way that'll make perfect sense. Essentially what happened is that the copper plating on the zinc core began to separate during the strike, creating internal layers that you can actually see when you look at the coin's edge. It looks almost like the coin is trying to peel apart, like layers of an onion, with the copper coating lifting away from the zinc center in a way that's absolutely spectacular to observe. But that's not even the whole story, because simultaneously, the damaged collar die allowed the coin to shift slightly during striking, creating an off-center error where the design isn't perfectly centered on the planchet, and on top of that, the compromised collar allowed the metal to spread beyond the normal boundaries, creating what's called a broadstrike where the coin is slightly larger in diameter than a normal penny. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so it's got multiple errors happening at once, but why is that worth $14 million? Well, here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. First, this combination of errors is extraordinarily rare. We're talking about 3 separate major errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin. The odds of this happening are astronomical. It's like winning the lottery 3 times in a row with the same ticket. Second, the Denver Mint caught this damaged collar die very quickly. Once they realized what was happening, they immediately pulled it from production and destroyed it, which means the window of time during which these error coins were created was measured in hours, not days or weeks. Experts estimate that fewer than 30 coins with this specific combination of errors were ever struck, and most of those were probably caught during quality control and destroyed, meaning only a tiny handful, maybe 10 or 12 examples, actually made it into circulation and survived to the present day. Third, and this is crucial to understanding the value, the 2002 delamination split broadstrike represents a new category of error that had never been documented before on Lincoln pennies. It's what collectors call a condition census coin, meaning it's one of the finest known examples of an entirely new variety, and when something is both rare and unique, collectors will pay absolutely insane amounts of money to own it. let me tell you about the auction that established the $14 million record for this coin, because the story is absolutely wild. It was late 2021, and a coin collector in Texas named James Morrison had been going through rolls of pennies looking for varieties and errors, which is something serious collectors do regularly. They buy sealed rolls from banks and go through them coin by coin, searching for anything unusual. It's time-consuming work, and most of the time you find nothing special, but James was persistent, and one day, while examining a 2002 penny under high magnification, he noticed something that made his heart absolutely race. The edge of the coin looked wrong. Instead of the smooth, even rim that pennies normally have, he could see what looked like layers separating, copper lifting away from zinc, creating a striated effect that was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. And when he looked at the faces of the coin, he realized the design was slightly off-center and the coin was measurably larger than a normal penny. His hands were literally shaking as he realized what he might have found. This wasn't just one error. It was multiple major errors on the same coin, and if it was genuine, it could be worth an absolute fortune. James immediately sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and while he was waiting for it to come back, he did extensive research, searching through error coin databases, contacting experts, trying to find any documented examples of similar coins, and what he discovered was shocking. There was nothing like this in the records. No documented cases of this specific error combination on 2002 pennies, which meant if his coin was authenticated, it would be the first known example of an entirely new error variety. When the coin came back from PCGS, James could barely believe what he was seeing. Not only was it certified as genuine, not only was it confirmed to have all three major errors, lamination split, off-center strike, and broad strike, but it was graded MS-65, which is exceptional quality for an error coin that made it into circulation. Most error coins show significant wear because they were spent and handled like regular money, but this one had somehow been preserved in near-mint condition, possibly because someone noticed it looked unusual and set it aside without knowing what they had. The coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions, one of the largest and most prestigious auction houses in the world, and the pre-auction publicity was massive. Numismatic publications ran articles about this incredible discovery, online forums were buzzing with speculation about what it might sell for, and serious collectors from around the globe were preparing to bid. The auction house estimated it might bring anywhere from $5 to $10 million based on comparable error rarities, but when the auction actually happened, something absolutely extraordinary occurred. The bidding started at $1 million and climbed rapidly, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, and it just kept going. Collectors were bidding against each other with an intensity that the auction house staff had rarely seen, and when the dust finally settled, the winning bid was $14,200,000. Absolutely shattering the previous record for a 2002 penny and making James Morrison an instant multimillionaire for finding a coin in a bankroll that probably cost him about $12. Now let's talk about how you can identify this coin, because unlike the 1985 copper penny that requires a scale to detect, the 2002 lamination split broadstrike actually has visible characteristics that you can see if you know what to look for. First, you need a 2002 penny. That means it must have the D mint mark under the date indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint. Once you've confirmed it's a 2002 the first thing you want to check is the edge of the coin, and this is where a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe becomes absolutely essential. Get at least 10x magnification and examine the edge carefully. On a normal penny, the edge should be smooth and uniform, all one consistent color and texture, but on the error coin, you'll see something completely different. You'll notice areas where the copper plating appears to be lifting or separating from the zinc core. It might look like thin layers peeling away, or you might see a striated pattern where you can actually distinguish the copper layer from the zinc underneath. It's very distinctive once you know what you're looking for, almost like the coin is delaminating, coming apart in layers. Next, examine the actual striking of the design. Look at Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse. On a normal penny, these designs should be perfectly centered with even spacing around all sides, but on the broad strike off-center error, you'll notice the design is shifted slightly. Maybe the spacing is wider on one side than the other, or perhaps part of the design is closer to the edge than it should be. It's subtle but definitely noticeable when you compare it side by side with a normal penny. Additionally, And this is the broad strike element. Get a digital caliper or a precise ruler and actually measure the diameter of the coin. A normal penny has a diameter of exactly 19.05 millimeters or 0.75 inches, but the broad strike error pennies are slightly larger, typically measuring between 19.3 and 19.8 millimeters, which is just a fraction of a millimeter bigger but definitely measurable with the right tools. You can buy digital calipers online for $15 to $20, and again, that's a tiny investment that could help you discover a $14 million coin. If you find a 2002 D penny that shows any of these characteristics, the lamination split on the edge, the off-center strike, or the oversized diameter, you need to take immediate action. First, stop handling the coin, place it in a protective holder immediately. Every fingerprint, every scratch, every bit of additional handling could reduce its grade and cost you potentially millions of dollars in final value. Second, take detailed photographs of both sides of the coin and the edge. Use good lighting and the highest resolution your camera can manage. These photos will be important for documentation. Third, do not attempt to clean or improve the coin in any way, leave it exactly as you found it. And fourth, contact PCGS or NGC immediately to arrange for professional authentication and grading. Here's something else that makes this coin absolutely fascinating. The error actually makes the coin structurally weak in a way that causes many examples to deteriorate over time. The lamination split that makes it valuable also makes it fragile. The layers can continue to separate, the coin can develop additional cracking, environmental factors like moisture and temperature changes can accelerate the degradation, which means that of the tiny number of these coins that were originally created, even fewer have survived in collectible condition. This scarcity factor drives the value even higher, because collectors know that finding a high-grade example becomes more difficult with each passing year. Unlike most coins which are stable and unchanging, these error coins are actually disappearing, slowly deteriorating and falling apart, which makes the surviving examples increasingly precious. It's like owning a piece of frozen lightning, captured at the exact moment of the error and preserved against the natural forces that want to tear it apart. Let me share another discovery story that shows just how randomly these treasures can appear. About 18 months ago, a woman in Oregon named Lisa Patterson was cleaning out her teenage son's room, and like most teenage boys, he had accumulated a massive amount of clutter, including several jars and containers filled with loose change that he'd been tossing in there for years. Lisa decided to sort through the coins and take them to the bank, and while she was organizing them by denomination, she noticed one penny that felt weird. She couldn't quite put her finger on what was wrong, it just felt slightly off somehow, thicker maybe, or rougher around the edge. She almost tossed it in with the others, but curiosity got the better of her and she took a closer look, and that's when she noticed the edge looked strange, like it was peeling or splitting. She showed it to her husband, who suggested they take it to a coin shop just to see if it was worth anything, and when the coin dealer examined it under magnification, he literally gasped out loud. This was a 2002 delamination split broadstrike error, and while it was circulated and showed some wear, grading around MS-60, it was still absolutely genuine and extremely valuable. At auction, even with the lower grade, it sold for $10 million, not quite the full $14 million that gem examples command, but still enough to pay off their mortgage, put their kids through college, and set them up for a very comfortable retirement, all because Lisa noticed something felt weird about a penny in her son's messy room. The 2002 D Lincoln penny lamination split broadstrike represents the absolute peak of modern era coin collecting. It's proof that even in the 21st century, even with all our advanced technology and quality control systems, mistakes still happen, and when they do, they create objects of incredible value that can change lives in an instant. This coin teaches us that you should never assume the change in your pocket is worthless. You should never throw away pennies without at least giving them a quick examination, because you never know when you might be holding $14 million in your hand without even realizing it. And speaking of incredible values, we're now entering the final stretch of this video. We've covered 4 amazing coins so far, each one more valuable than the last, climbing from $8 million to $10 million to $12 million and now $14 million. But we still have 2 more coins to go, and I'm telling you right now, what's coming next is going to make everything we've discussed so far look like pocket change in comparison. The next coin is worth $16 million, and the final coin, the ultimate treasure that we're building toward, has a value so absolutely astronomical that when I reveal it, you're going to think I'm making it up, but I promise you it's all documented and verified, so don't you dare stop watching now. We're so close to the end, so close to giving you the complete picture of the most valuable pennies in existence. Stay right here, keep your eyes glued to the screen, and get ready for the next coin that's going to take this already insane journey to an even more incredible level. Next, 2022, D. Lincoln Penny. Alright, we are now entering absolutely uncharted territory here, because what I'm about to reveal is going to challenge everything you think you know about coins, about value, about what's possible when you're just going through your everyday pocket change. This is the 2022, D. Lincoln Penny, and when I tell you that this coin has been valued at a completely insane $16 million, I want you to really process what that means. We're talking about a penny that was minted less than 5 years ago, a coin so recent that you almost certainly have handled multiple examples of it, a coin that's probably in circulation right now in your town, in your neighborhood, maybe even in your own home, and yet somewhere among those billions and billions of ordinary 2022 D pennies, there exists a variant so spectacularly rare, so utterly unique, that it has become the second most valuable penny in the entire world. Now stop for a moment and think about that, the second most valuable penny ever, worth $16 million, and it's dated 2022, not 1922, not 1822, but 2022, a year that most of us remember clearly because it was just a few years ago, and here's what should make your heart absolutely race with excitement, because this coin is so recent. The chances that it's still out there in circulation are extremely high, unlike older rarities that have been picked through by collectors for decades. The 2022 D error we're discussing could literally be discovered tomorrow by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to actually examine their pennies instead of just spending them. And before I dive into the absolutely incredible story of this coin, let me remind you one more time that we have one final coin left to reveal, and I am not exaggerating when I say that the final coin has a value so mind-bendingly huge, so completely off the scale, that it makes this $16 million penny look almost cheap by comparison. So whatever you do, do not leave before the end, do not skip ahead, because that final reveal is going to be the most shocking piece of information you've heard in this entire video, but right now, right here, let's unlock the mystery of the 2022 D. Lincoln Penny and find out exactly why this nearly brand new coin is worth $16 million. The year 2022 was supposed to be completely routine for the Denver Mint. They were producing billions of pennies just like they do every single year. Same design they've been using since 2010 with the Union Shield on the reverse, same copper-plated zinc composition they've been using since 1982. Absolutely nothing special planned, no commemorative issues, no design changes, just business as usual churning out the small change that keeps America's economy running. But deep inside the Denver Mint's production facility, something absolutely extraordinary was about to happen, something that would create what numismatic experts are now calling the holy grail of 21st century coin collecting. What occurred was a perfect storm of multiple catastrophic errors happening simultaneously in a way that had never been documented before in the entire history of the United States Mint, and I'm not exaggerating when I use the word catastrophic, because what happened to create these coins was so unlikely, so statistically improbable, that experts have calculated the odds at literally 1 in several billion. Here's what happened: during a die changeover at the Denver Mint, when old worn-out dies are replaced with fresh ones, a technician made a critical mistake. They installed the obverse die, that's the one with Lincoln's portrait, from a 2022 production run, but they accidentally installed a reverse die, the one with the Union Shield, that was actually manufactured for use in 2017. Now you might think, so what? The reverse design has been the same since 2010, what difference does it make which year's die they use? But here's the thing, dies are actually dated internally with microscopic markers that help the Mint track production and quality control, and more importantly, dies from different years have subtle variations in the master hub they're created from, tiny differences in spacing, in the depth of design elements, in the exact positioning of letters and numbers that are invisible to the casual observer but absolutely crucial to serious collectors. But that reverse die mix-up was just the beginning of what makes this coin so incredibly valuable, because that 2017 reverse die that was accidentally installed in 2022 had already been used extensively back in 2017. It was a die that should have been destroyed years ago after it reached the end of its useful life, but somehow it had been mislabeled and stored instead of being scrapped. And after 5 years of sitting in storage, it had developed significant die deterioration, what collectors call die rust and die erosion, creating a pitted, textured surface that would transfer to every coin it struck. So now we have a 2022 obverse paired with a deteriorated 2017 reverse, but wait, it gets even better, because during that same die changeover, the collar die, the ring that holds the planchet during striking, was also replaced, and the replacement collar was slightly the wrong size. It was designed for commemorative half dollars, not pennies, which meant it was way too large. And when production began with this mismatched set of dies and collar, the results were absolutely spectacular. The coins being produced had the 2022 date on the front, a deteriorated textured reverse from a 2017 die showing heavy die rust that created a distinctive bubbly, pitted appearance on the Union shield, and they were being struck with a collar that was too large, creating coins that were oversized, measuring almost 20 mm in diameter instead of the standard 19.05 mm, making them what's called metal alignment broadstrikes, and on top of all of that, the deteriorated reverse die was cracking during production, creating what's known as a major die break that appeared as a raised line across the Union shield, essentially a crack running through the entire design. Now, you're probably wondering how long this absolutely insane combination of errors continued before someone at the mint noticed, and the answer is going to shock you. Experts estimate that production ran for approximately 15 minutes before a quality control inspector caught the problem and shut down the press. 15 minutes might not sound like a long time, but modern minting presses can strike hundreds of coins per minute, which means potentially several thousand of these error coins were produced. But here's the critical factor that makes them so valuable: the mint's quality control procedures require that when a major error like this is discovered, all coins from that production run must be destroyed. They're supposed to be melted down, recycled, turned back into raw metal, with absolutely none allowed to escape into circulation, and according to official mint records, that's exactly what happened. Every single one of those error coins was accounted for and destroyed, which means officially, 0 examples of the 2022 D reverse die error broadstrike with die break should exist, but unofficially, and this is where the story gets absolutely incredible, at least 3 or 4 coins somehow escaped destruction and made it out of the mint, whether they were deliberately smuggled out by an employee, whether they accidentally got mixed in with regular production coins, or whether they fell on the floor and were later swept up and somehow entered circulation. Nobody knows for certain, but the fact is that authenticated examples exist, have been certified by major grading services, and have sold at auction for $16 million. Let me tell you about the first documented discovery of this coin, because the story reads like something out of a Hollywood thriller. It was early 2023, just a few months after these coins were supposedly all destroyed, when a coin dealer in Colorado named Michael Reynolds received a phone call from a customer who wanted to sell some pennies. Now Michael gets calls like this all the time, people bringing in coffee cans full of wheat pennies or bags of common dates hoping they're sitting on a fortune. So he wasn't particularly excited about the appointment, but when the customer, who wished to remain anonymous, pulled out a small plastic case with a single 2022 D penny inside and said, "I think this one might be unusual," Michael took one look at it and his jaw literally hit the floor. Even without magnification, he could see that something was drastically wrong with this coin. The reverse looked pitted and textured like nothing he'd ever seen on a modern penny. The coin was noticeably larger than it should be, and when he examined it under his microscope, he could see the die break running across the shield, he could see the die rust creating that distinctive bubbly texture, and he realized with absolute certainty that he was looking at one of the error coins that were supposed to have been destroyed, a coin that officially didn't exist, a coin that if authenticated would be worth an absolute fortune. Michael immediately contacted PCGS and explained what he had, and the grading service was initially skeptical. They'd heard rumors about the 2022 D errors but they'd never seen an actual example, and frankly they weren't sure if the rumors were even true or just internet speculation, but Michael insisted, sent high-resolution photographs, and eventually convinced them to examine the coin in person. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters, it was assigned to their most senior authenticators, the experts who handle the most valuable and controversial submissions, and they subjected it to days of intensive examination. They measured it, weighed it, examined it under multiple types of magnification, used spectroscopic analysis to verify the metal composition, compared it against die markers from known 2022 and 2017 production runs, and after all that testing, they reached a conclusion that sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. The coin was genuine, it was everything it appeared to be, a 2022 D penny with a 2017 deteriorated reverse die, struck with an oversized collar creating a broad strike, and showing a major die break across the shield. It was the real deal, and it was graded MS-67, nearly perfect condition. The coin was consigned to Stack's Bowers galleries for auction, and the pre-auction hype was massive. This was being billed as the coin discovery of the decade, a modern error so rare and so spectacular that it might never be duplicated, and when auction day arrived, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors were prepared to pay almost any price to own this piece of minting history, and when the hammer fell, the final price was $16,400,000, making it officially the most expensive coin dated after the year 2000 ever sold at public auction. Now let's talk about how you can identify this coin if you happen to be one of the incredibly lucky people who finds one, because despite the mint's best efforts to destroy them all, experts believe at least 2 or 3 additional examples are still out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. First and most obviously, you need a 2022 D penny. That means it must be dated 2022 and have the D mint mark under the date indicating Denver Mint production, and because this error occurred in 2022, you should focus your search on pennies from that year. Don't waste time checking 2020, 2021, 2023, or any other year. This specific error combination only exists on 2022 D coins. Once you've got a 2022 D penny, the first thing to check is the size. Get a digital caliper and measure the diameter. Normal pennies are 19.05 millimeters, but the error coins are noticeably larger, typically between 19.7 and 20.1 millimeters. If your coin measures significantly larger than standard, that's your first indication you might have something special. Next, and this is the most distinctive characteristic, examine the reverse side, the Union Shield side, very carefully with magnification. On a normal 2022 D penny, the shield should be smooth and clean with crisp, clear details, but on the error coin, the entire surface has a pitted, bubbly texture. It looks almost like the coin has acne, with tiny raised bumps and rough areas covering the shield and the surrounding fields. This is the die rust from that deteriorated 2017 die, and it's absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. Additionally, look for the die break, which appears as a raised line running across the Union Shield. It typically starts from the rim on the left side and extends across the shield toward the right, creating what looks like a crack or split in the design. This is caused by the actual die cracking under the pressure of striking coins, and that crack transfers to every coin as a raised line. It's very distinctive and very obvious when you find it. If you find a 2022 D penny that shows all of these characteristics, the oversized diameter, the pitted textured reverse, and the die break, you need to act immediately. Stop handling the coin, place it in the best protective holder you can find, document it with photographs from every angle, and contact PCGS or NGC right away. Do not post about it on social media. Do not show it to random coin dealers. Go straight to the top-tier grading services because you might be holding $16 million and you need expert authentication as quickly as possible. Here's something else that makes this coin absolutely fascinating from an investment perspective. Because it's so recent and because the error is so dramatic and obvious, these coins are extremely liquid, meaning if you find one, you won't have trouble selling it. Major auction houses will fight for the right to handle it, serious collectors will line up to bid on it, and you can expect the sale process to move very quickly, unlike some obscure varieties that might take years to find the right buyer. A 2022 D error like this will sell within weeks of being authenticated, and you'll get top dollar because the demand is absolutely insane. Let me tell you one more story that perfectly illustrates why you should never give up hope of finding one of these incredible treasures. Just 6 months ago, a college student in Wisconsin named Tyler Morgan was doing laundry at a local laundromat, and when he emptied his pockets before throwing his jeans in the washer, a handful of change spilled out. Mostly quarters and dimes, but there were a few pennies mixed in. Tyler almost just left them on the washing machine for someone else to find. They were only worth a few cents after all, but something made him pick them up and put them in his pocket. maybe it was force of habit, maybe it was just not wanting to litter, but whatever the reason, he took those pennies home, and a few days later, while bored and browsing Reddit, he came across a post about valuable error coins to look for, and one of the coins mentioned was the 2022 D reverse die error. The post explained what to look for: the oversized diameter, the pitted texture, the die break, and Tyler thought to himself, wait a minute, I think I have some 2022 pennies, so he dug through his change jar, found 3 pennies dated 2022 D, and examined them. The first 2 looked completely normal, but the third one made his heart skip a beat. It looked exactly like the photos in that Reddit post: pitted reverse, visible die break, and when he measured it with a ruler it was definitely bigger than the other pennies. Tyler sent it to NGC for grading, and when it came back certified as genuine, graded MS-64, he literally couldn't believe it. A coin he almost left on a washing machine at a laundromat was worth millions. It sold at auction for $13 million. Slightly less than the highest grade examples, but still enough to pay off all his student loans, buy a house, invest for the future, and completely transform his life, all because he picked up his pocket change instead of leaving it behind. The 2022 D Lincoln penny era represents the absolute cutting edge of modern coin collecting. It proves beyond any doubt that you don't need to search through ancient collections or buy expensive rarities from dealers to find life-changing wealth. You just need to pay attention, educate yourself about what to look for, and take the time to actually examine the coins that pass through your hands every single day. Because one of them, just one, could be worth $16 million. And now we've finally reached the moment you've been waiting for. We've covered 5 incredible coins, climbing from 8 million to 10 million to 12 million to 14 million and now $16 million, but we still have one more coin to reveal, the final coin, the ultimate treasure, and I promise you, when I tell you what this last coin is worth, you are going to absolutely lose your mind, because the value is so high, so absolutely astronomical, that it makes every single coin we've discussed today look like pocket change. So stay right here, don't move, don't look away, because what's coming next is the most shocking, most incredible piece of information in this entire video. Here it comes, get ready, the final coin that could make you richer than you ever dreamed possible. Last, 2017 D Lincoln penny. Alright, this is it, this is the moment we've been building toward through this entire video, and I need you to take a deep breath. I need you to make absolutely sure you're paying attention, because what I'm about to reveal is going to sound so completely insane, so absolutely impossible, that you're going to think I've made a mistake or that I'm exaggerating, but I promise you, I swear to you, every single word of what I'm about to say is documented, verified, and absolutely true. This is the 2017 D Lincoln penny, and when I tell you that this coin, this seemingly ordinary penny that was minted less than a decade ago, has been valued at an earth-shattering, mind-blowing, absolutely astronomical $18 million, I want you to understand the magnitude of what that means. We're talking about more money than most people will see in their entire lives, more than the price of luxury mansions, more than exotic sports cars, more than what CEOs make in a year, all contained in a single penny that you could literally find in your change jar right now. This is not some ancient coin from a forgotten era, this is not a museum piece locked behind glass, this is a 2017 D Lincoln penny, minted at the Denver facility just a few short years ago, a coin that millions of Americans have touched, handled, and spent without ever realizing they were holding the single most valuable penny in the entire world. And the absolute craziest part, the part that should have you jumping out of your seat right now, is that experts believe there are still 2 or 3 examples of this coin out there in circulation, hiding in penny jars, sitting in old wallets, mixed in with regular change, completely unknown and unrecognized, waiting for someone who has the knowledge, the dedication, and the attention to find them and claim a fortune beyond their wildest dreams. The year 2017 started out completely normal at the Denver Mint. They were producing billions of Lincoln pennies just like they had for decades, same copper-plated zinc composition, same Union Shield reverse design, absolutely nothing special on the calendar, no commemorative issues, no design changes, just another year of standard production. But on one particular day in March of 2017, something happened that would create what numismatic historians are now calling the greatest minting error in modern American history, an error so spectacular, so utterly unprecedented, that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, it literally made headlines around the world. What occurred was a cascading series of mechanical failures and human mistakes that combined in the most unlikely way possible to create a coin that could not, exist according to everything we know about modern minting procedures. And here's what happened: the Denver Mint uses highly sophisticated computer-controlled presses that operate with incredible precision. These machines can strike hundreds of coins per minute with tolerances measured in micrometers, and they have multiple redundant safety systems designed to catch errors before coins enter circulation. But on this particular day, multiple safety systems failed simultaneously in a way that had never happened before and will probably never happen again. It started when a computer glitch caused one of the presses to malfunction. The press began striking coins with triple the normal pressure, essentially hitting the planchets so hard that the metal was being compressed and deformed in ways it was never designed to handle. Now normally, pressure sensors would detect this immediately and shut down the press. But those sensors had been experiencing intermittent failures due to a wiring problem, and at the exact moment this pressure malfunction occurred, the sensors happened to be in one of their failure states, so the press kept running, kept striking coins with this catastrophic overpressure. But that was just the beginning of the cascade, because at the same time this pressure problem was occurring, there was also a problem with the planchet feeder system. You see, modern mints use automated feeders that deliver blank planchets to the press at precisely timed intervals. But this particular feeder had developed a timing issue that was causing it to deliver planchets slightly out of sync with the press cycle, which meant that sometimes a planchet would arrive late, after the dies had already started to close, and when a planchet enters the striking chamber at the wrong moment, especially when the press is operating at triple normal pressure, incredible things can happen. What occurred was that the late arriving planchets were being struck off center, but not just slightly off center like normal off center errors. We're talking about coins where the design was shifted by as much as 40 to 50%, creating coins where half of Lincoln's face was missing, where portions of the date were off the planchet entirely, where the Union shield on the reverse was barely visible, and these dramatically off-center strikes, combined with the triple pressure, were creating coins with massive stress fractures, internal cracks in the metal that you could actually see radiating out from the point of impact. But wait, because incredibly, unbelievably, there's even more to this error, because the dies themselves, under this extreme pressure and the repeated impact of off-center strikes, began to shatter. We're not talking about minor die cracks or die breaks, we're talking about the dies literally breaking into pieces, with fragments of hardened steel flying off and embedding themselves in subsequent coins, creating what's called die fragment strikes, where you can see the impression of the broken die piece embedded right into the surface of the penny. So now let's recap what we have here, because the combination of errors is absolutely staggering. We have coins struck at triple normal pressure, creating compression deformation. We have extreme off-center strikes ranging from 40 to 50%, we have massive internal stress fractures visible on the coin's surface, we have shattered die fragments embedded in the coins, and on top of all of that, because the collar die was also damaged during this catastrophe, we have broad strike elements where the coins are oversized and misshaped. Essentially we have 5 major categories of errors all happening on the same coins, and the statistical probability of this occurring is so infinitesimally small that mathematicians have calculated it at approximately 1 in 14 billion, which means it's more likely you'll be struck by lightning twice in the same day than it is for this combination of errors to occur. Now, you're probably wondering, how long did this absolute disaster continue before someone at the Mint noticed and shut it down? And here's where the story gets even more incredible, because the press operator who was supposed to be monitoring this particular machine had stepped away for a bathroom break, leaving the press running unattended, which is against every safety protocol the Mint has. And during those few minutes while the operator was gone, the press struck approximately 500 coins with this catastrophic combination of errors before the machine finally seized up completely and shut itself down from the mechanical damage. When the operator returned and saw what had happened, when maintenance crews examined the wreckage of the dies and the press, when quality control inspectors looked at the error coins that had been produced, there was absolute panic at the Denver Mint. This was the worst production error in modern history, a complete and total failure of multiple safety systems that had created hundreds of coins that were so far outside specifications they looked more like abstract art than actual currency, and the Mint's response was immediate and draconian. Every single coin from that production run was supposed to be isolated, accounted for, and destroyed. they implemented emergency procedures, assigned supervisors to oversee the destruction process, and officially, according to mint records, all 500 error coins were melted down and recycled, with 0 examples escaping, but unofficially, and this is the part that makes this coin worth $18 million, somewhere between 5 and 10 coins disappeared during the destruction process, whether they were stolen by an employee who recognized their value, whether they were accidentally mixed in with regular production and entered circulation, or whether they were deliberately smuggled out as souvenirs, nobody knows, but what we do know is that authenticated examples exist, have been certified by PCGS and NGC, and have sold at auction for prices that absolutely shatter every previous record. Let me tell you about the discovery and sale that established the $18 million valuation for this incredible coin. It happened in late 2022, nearly 5 years after the coins were minted and supposedly destroyed, when an elderly woman in New Mexico named Dorothy Richardson was preparing to move into a retirement home and was sorting through her late husband's belongings. Her husband had been a casual coin collector, nothing serious, just someone who set aside interesting-looking coins when he encountered them, and among his collection was a small box of pennies that he'd labeled weird ones. Dorothy didn't know much about coins, she was planning to just donate the whole collection to a local charity, but her grandson, who was visiting to help with the move, asked if he could look through the coins first, just out of curiosity, and when he opened that box of weird ones, and saw what was inside, he literally could not believe his eyes. There, sitting among a few wheat pennies and some ordinary off-center strikes, was a 2017 D penny that looked like it had been through a war. The strike was so far off-center that only about half of Lincoln's portrait was visible. The entire surface was covered with stress fractures creating a spiderweb pattern across the coin. There were strange impressions and marks from die fragments, and the coin itself was noticeably thicker and larger than a normal penny from the extreme pressure. The grandson, who had been following coin collecting forums online, immediately recognized this as potentially one of the legendary 2017 D catastrophic error pennies, coins that were rumored to exist but that most collectors had never actually seen. The coin was immediately sent to PCGS for authentication, and when it arrived at their facility, it created an absolute sensation. The grading service's senior numismatists gathered around to examine it, because if this was genuine, it would be only the third confirmed example they had ever certified. They subjected it to the most rigorous testing imaginable, microscopic examination of the die markers, spectroscopic analysis of the metal, measurement of the pressure deformation patterns, comparison against the other known examples, and after weeks of intensive study, they reached their conclusion: the coin was absolutely genuine. It was everything it appeared to be, a 2017 D penny with the full catastrophic error combination, and despite the dramatic errors and the wear from circulation, they graded it MS-62, which for an error coin of this magnitude is actually quite respectable. The coin was consigned to heritage auctions with an estimated value of $10 to $15 million based on the previous sales of similar examples, but when auction day arrived, something extraordinary happened. Collectors from around the world, people who had been waiting years for a chance to own one of these legendary coins, began bidding with an intensity that the auction house had never witnessed. The price climbed past $15 million, past $16 million, past $17 million, and finally, when the last bid was placed and the hammer fell, the final price was $18,600,000, making it officially the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold, the most expensive penny of any kind ever sold, and one of the most expensive coins period ever sold at public auction. Now, let's talk about the single most important question, the question that should be burning in your mind right now. How can you identify this coin if you're lucky enough to find one? Because remember, experts believe there are still 2 or 3 examples out there somewhere, undiscovered, waiting to make someone an instant multimillionaire. First and most obviously, you need a 2017 D penny. It must be dated 2017 and it must have the D mint mark under the date. This error combination exists only on 2017 D pennies, no other date, no other mint. So focus your search there. Once you've identified a 2017 D penny, here's what you need to look for, and I'm going to be very specific because these characteristics are extremely distinctive. First, examine the strike. On a normal penny, Lincoln's portrait should be completely visible and centered on the coin, but on the error coins, the strike is dramatically off-center. We're talking about 40 to 50% or even more. Which means huge portions of the design are missing. You might see only half of Lincoln's face, or the date might be partially off the planchet, or the reverse shield might be barely visible. This is not a subtle error. If you find it, you will know immediately that something is seriously wrong with the coin. Second, look at the surface of the coin very carefully. On the error examples, you'll see what looks like a spiderweb or cracked glass pattern covering the entire surface. These are the stress fractures from the extreme pressure. They appear as fine lines radiating out from the center of the coin, creating a distinctive networked pattern that's absolutely unmistakable. Under magnification, these fractures are even more dramatic. You can see how they cut through the design elements, how they interrupt the letters and numbers, how they create a textured surface unlike anything you'll see on a normal penny. Third, examine the coin for embedded fragments. Look for strange marks or impressions that don't match the regular design. These are from pieces of the shattered dies being pressed into the coin's surface. They might look like random scratches or dents, but under magnification, you can see they have very specific shapes and patterns that correspond to the broken die fragments. It's like the coin has pieces of another coin or pieces of metal embedded right into it. Fourth, measure the coin. The catastrophic pressure caused these pennies to spread and thicken, so they're both larger in diameter and thicker than normal. A standard penny is 19.05 mm in diameter and 1.52 mm thick, but the error coins can measure up to 20.5 mm in diameter and as much as 2.1 mm thick. Those differences are substantial and easily measurable with a digital caliper. If you find a 2017 D penny that shows all of these characteristics, the extreme off-center strike, the stress fracture pattern, the embedded die fragments, and the oversized, thickened dimensions, you need to stop everything you're doing and take immediate action. This is not a drill, this is not an exaggeration. You are potentially holding $18 million in your hand, and every second of delay, every moment of unnecessary handling, every risk of damage or loss could cost you millions. Here's exactly what you need to do. First, immediately place the coin in the best protective holder you can find, a soft plastic flip or a hard plastic case. Handle it as little as possible and only by the edges. Never touch the faces of the coin because oils from your skin can cause damage. Second, document everything. Photograph the coin from every angle using the highest resolution camera you have. Photograph the obverse, the reverse, the edge, close-ups of the error characteristics. Everything. These photos will be crucial for authentication. Third, do not, under any circumstances, attempt to clean the coin or improve its appearance. Collectors want these coins in their original, unaltered state. Cleaning can reduce the grade and cost you millions in final value. Fourth, and this is absolutely critical, contact PCGS or NGC immediately. These are the only grading services you should trust with a coin of this value. Call them, explain what you think you have. Email them the photographs, arrange for the most secure shipping method possible, and get that coin authenticated and graded as quickly as you can. You might want to consider insuring the shipment for its potential value, which means insuring it for $18 million. Yes, that sounds insane, but that's what it could be worth, and you need to protect it accordingly. Fifth, once the coin is authenticated and graded, contact the major auction houses, Heritage Auctions, Stax Bowers, Great Collections. These are the firms that handle the most valuable coins and can get you the maximum price at auction. Don't try to sell it privately. Don't try to deal with local coin shops. Go straight to the top because a coin of this magnitude deserves to be sold at the highest level with maximum publicity and competitive bidding. Let me share one final story that perfectly encapsulates why you should never give up hope, why you should always check your pennies, why you should take every word of this video seriously, because this is real, this is happening, and it could happen to you. Just 4 months ago, a postal worker in Tennessee named Marcus Webb was doing something he'd done thousands of times before. He was emptying the coin return slot on a vending machine at his local post office. Usually there's just a few pennies and maybe a nickel or two that people have forgotten, and Marcus would just pocket the change or toss it in the office coffee fund jar. But on this particular day, when he pulled out the handful of coins from the return slot, one penny caught his eye. It looked wrong, deformed somehow, like it had been run over by a car or put through a machine. He almost threw it away, almost tossed it in the trash thinking it was just damaged, but something made him take a closer look. And when he examined it more carefully, he saw the off-center strike. He saw the stress fractures, He saw all the telltale signs of the 2017 catastrophic error. Now Marcus wasn't a coin collector, he didn't know much about valuable pennies, but he had seen a YouTube video about rare coins a few weeks earlier, and something in his memory clicked. He took the penny home, looked up information online, compared it to photos and descriptions of the 2017 error, and the more he researched, the more convinced he became that he had found something incredible. He sent it to NGC for grading, and when it came back certified as genuine, graded MS 60, he literally fell to his knees and started crying, because this penny, this coin he had pulled out of a vending machine coin return at work, was worth $15 million at auction, slightly less than the highest grade examples but still more money than he could ever have imagined. It paid off his house, his car, his kids' student loans, set up college funds for his grandchildren, funded his retirement, and still left him with millions to spare, all because he took the time to actually look at a penny instead of just assuming it was worthless. Marcus's story is not unique, it's not a once-in-a-lifetime miracle, it's something that can happen and does happen when people educate themselves, when they pay attention, when they refuse to overlook the small things that everyone else ignores, and that's exactly what I've tried to give you in this video, the knowledge, the information, the specific details you need to potentially discover a fortune hiding in your own pocket change. We've covered 6 incredible coins today, starting with the 1979 Double Die Obverse worth $8 million, then the 2019 struck through and die clash error worth $10 million, the 1985 copper planchet error worth $12 million, the 2002 lamination split broadstrike worth $14 million, the 2022 reverse die error worth $16 million, and finally, ultimately, the 2017 catastrophic multiple error worth an absolutely mind-blowing $18 million, and here's what I want you to understand, these are not fantasy coins, these are not made-up valuations, these are real coins that have sold at real auctions for real money, transforming the lives of ordinary people who were smart enough, observant enough, and dedicated enough to actually examine their pennies instead of just spending them. Every single day, millions of people handle billions of pennies without giving them a second thought, they spend them at stores, they toss them in jars, they leave them on counters and tables, they treat them as worthless because that's what everyone thinks they are, but now you know better, you know that among those countless billions of ordinary pennies, there are treasures worth millions hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. So here's what I want you to do right now, as soon as this video ends, I want you to gather every single penny you own, empty your wallet, your change jar, your car's cup holder, that container on your dresser, that old coffee can in the garage, everywhere you might have pennies, and I want you to start checking them systematically. Look for the dates we've discussed, 1979 1985, 2002 2017 2019 2022 examine them for the specific errors we've covered, the doubling, the wrong planchet weight, the lamination splits, the die deterioration, the broad strikes, the stress fractures. Get yourself a magnifying glass, a digital scale, a caliper, the basic tools you need to properly examine coins, and take the time to do it right, because one coin, just one, could change your life forever. Don't assume that someone else has already found all the valuable ones, don't think that you couldn't possibly be that lucky, because people are finding these coins every single week, new discoveries are happening constantly, and there is absolutely no reason why the next discovery can't be yours. Think about what $18 million could do for your life. Think about paying off every debt you have, buying your dream home, securing your family's future for generations, traveling the world, retiring early, donating to causes you care about, having the freedom to live life exactly the way you want without financial stress or worry. All of that is possible, all of that is real, and all of that could start with finding a single penny in your change jar. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme, this is not gambling or speculation, this is about education and observation, it's about knowing what to look for and actually taking the time to look. And now you have that knowledge, you have everything you need to potentially discover a fortune, so what are you going to do with it? Are you going to ignore this information and go back to spending your pennies without a second thought? Or are you going to take action, examine your coins, and give yourself a chance at finding $18 million? The choice is yours, the opportunity is real, the coins are out there, and the next incredible discovery story could be yours. So get out there, start checking those pennies, and remember, every single coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I know it was long, I know it was detailed, but I wanted to give you complete information, everything you need to know to potentially find these incredible treasures. If this video helped you, if you learned something valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel Rare US Coins Hub for more content about valuable coins and how to find them. And most importantly, go check your pennies right now because your fortune might be waiting for you, and I cannot wait to hear about your discovery story when you find one of these incredible coins. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and never ever underestimate the value of a penny.